been eagerly anticipating a relaxing weekend getaway at an upscale hotel renowned for its luxurious amenities and serene setting. The hotel was a perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and I was excited to enjoy some well-deserved rest. I checked in on Friday afternoon, looking forward to unwinding in comfort. The first day of my stay was exactly what I had hoped for. Lounging by the pool, indulging in a gourmet dinner, and enjoying the tranquil atmosphere. But things took a dark turn on Saturday morning when I encountered a disturbing scene in the hotel lobby. A frantic couple, Mark and Sarah, were visibly distressed as they spoke with the front desk staff. Their daughter, Emily, had gone missing the previous night, and they were desperately seeking help. They were met with vague reassurances and a lack of urgency from the hotel staff, which struck me as odd. Moved by their plight, I approached them and offered to assist in their search. Mark and Sarah explained that Emily had last been seen in the hotel's common areas. They had already searched extensively, but were coming up empty-handed. Feeling a surge of empathy, I joined them in their investigation. As we explored the hotel, we began to uncover unsettling clues. Emily's belongings, a bracelet, a torn piece of fabric, and some personal items were scattered in strange places, as if someone wanted us to find them. The items seemed deliberately placed, leading us to suspect foul play. We discreetly questioned hotel staff, but their responses were evasive and their demeanor unsettlingly calm. The staff's behavior grew increasingly suspicious as they seemed to monitor our every move. I began to suspect that the staff might be involved in something sinister. The tension reached a boiling point when Mr. Collins, one of the hotel's managers, approached us. He inquired about our activities with a friendly but unsettling tone, suggesting we stop our search and leave the matter to the professionals. His insistence only heightened my concerns. As evening fell, the situation grew more ominous. The staff's surveillance of us became more blatant, and I realized that our safety was at risk. I came up with a plan to alert the authorities without drawing attention. Pretending to make a phone call, I slipped away to the hotel's business center and used a computer to send an anonymous tip to the local police. Returning to Mark and Sarah, I tried to keep calm, but my anxiety was palpable. The staff's behavior had turned increasingly aggressive, and it felt like we were being watched. I warned Mark and Sarah to stay close and be prepared to leave at a moment's notice. Suddenly, the situation took a horrifying turn. I was in the middle of a conversation with Mark and Sarah when a group of hotel staff members, including Mr. Collins, surrounded us. Before I could react, they grabbed me, their faces impassive and cold. I struggled, but their grip was firm. Panic surged through me as they dragged me down a hidden corridor. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. We were led to a concealed room in the hotel's basement, where the staff revealed their true intentions. It became clear that they had been involved in a network of abductions, using the hotel as a front for their criminal activities. Mark and Sarah were forced into a separate room, their cries for help echoing through the dimly lit space. I was shoved into a corner, my heart pounding with fear. The staff members discussed their plans to dispose of us, their voices growing more ominous with each passing moment. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, the sound of sirens pierced the air. The police, responding to my anonymous tip, had arrived and were conducting a search of the hotel. The staff's plans were disrupted as the authorities stormed the basement. In the chaos that followed, I was rescued along with Mark and Sarah. The police apprehended the perpetrators, and the missing individuals were safely recovered. The upscale hotel, which had promised a relaxing escape, had become a nightmarish trap. As I left the hotel the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered. What had started as a peaceful getaway had turned into a harrowing ordeal. The experience served as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most luxurious facades. I was on a solo vacation, excited to explore a new city without blowing my budget. To keep costs down, I booked a cheap hotel on the outskirts of town. The room seemed fine upon arrival, and I was reassured by the hotel's decent reviews. The first night passed uneventfully. I enjoyed a day of sightseeing and returned to the room feeling content. However, my sense of security was shattered on the second night. When I unlocked the door, I immediately noticed something was wrong. My neatly arranged belongings were now in disarray, my suitcase was open, and my clothes were scattered across the floor. A sense of dread washed over me as I approached the bathroom. On the mirror, someone had scrawled a chilling message in red lipstick. "I'm watching you." Panic set in. I quickly grabbed my phone and went downstairs to report the incident. The receptionist listened, but their skepticism was evident. They assured me that no one else had access to my room and promised to look into it, but their lack of urgency only heightened my anxiety. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to set up a hidden camera in my room. I hid it among my belongings and hoped it would capture any suspicious activity. The next day, I forced myself to enjoy the city, trying to push aside the gnawing fear. When I returned to the hotel that evening, I checked the footage from the hidden camera. The video revealed an intruder entering my room while I was out. The intruder moved through my belongings, rearranging them with unsettling calmness. Then, something terrifying happened. The intruder suddenly stopped and looked directly at the camera. Their face, shrouded in shadow, froze in recognition. I watched in horror as they reached out and disabled the camera, pulling it from its hiding place. I was paralyzed with fear. Before I could react, I heard a soft knock on my door. My heart raced as I approached and peeked through the peephole. The intruder was standing there, their face now clearly visible. They had a menacing grin as they spoke through the door. "I saw your little camera," they said, their voice dripping with malice. "I didn't expect you to find out so soon." My blood ran cold. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. The intruder continued to speak, their voice growing louder. "I know what you're trying to do, but you should have stayed out of my way." Fear gripped me as I realized the intruder had discovered the camera and was now confronting me. I had no idea what they wanted or how to handle the situation. I grabbed my phone and tried to call the front desk, but the line was dead, probably cut by the intruder. I had to act fast. I looked around the room for anything I could use to defend myself. I grabbed a heavy lamp and stood by the door, ready to use it if necessary. The intruder continued to knock, their persistence growing more intense. In a desperate move, I decided to use the window as my escape route. I opened it and carefully climbed out onto the ledge, my heart pounding as I balanced precariously. Below, I saw the parking lot, but the drop was too high to jump. I had no choice but to wait and hope the intruder would leave, or that someone would come to my aid. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the hotel manager and a couple of security guards approaching the area. I yelled for help, and they quickly came to my rescue. The intruder had vanished by then, leaving behind only their ominous message. The police were called, and a thorough investigation ensued. The hotel staff and authorities assured me they would do everything possible to find the intruder, but the experience left me shaken. The vacation, meant to be a relaxing escape, had turned into a harrowing ordeal. The thought that someone had confronted me so directly, invading my personal space and endangering my safety, haunted me long after I left the hotel. It was supposed to be a routine business trip. But the moment I arrived at the old, sprawling hotel on the outskirts of town, something felt off. The building had a grand, antique charm with its ornate fixtures and heavy velvet drapes, but there was a certain disquieting atmosphere that seemed to cling to its walls. As I approached the check-in desk, I noticed the receptionist, an elderly woman with a vacant stare, wasn't quite as welcoming as one would expect. She handed me the key to room 313 without a word, her eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. I noticed the key was old-fashioned, its brass tarnished and worn. The elevator, a creaky, ancient contraption, groaned as it carried me up to the 3rd floor. The hallway was dimly lit and deserted, with a thick layer of dust covering the carpet. As I approached my room, I noticed something peculiar. Room 313 was missing. The door was there, but the room number had been scratched off completely, leaving only a blank space. My curiosity piqued, but I dismissed it as a minor oversight and slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open to reveal a room that, though it had an antique feel, seemed perfectly normal. Well, except for a faint smell of mildew and a single unmade bed that looked as if it hadn't been touched in years. I shrugged off the oddities and set about preparing for the next day's meetings. As night fell and the hotel grew eerily quiet, I tried to get some rest. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I was jolted awake by a soft knocking sound coming from the door. Confused and groggy, I got out of bed and opened the door to find no one there. The hallway was empty, save for a flickering light at the end. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination and returned to bed, but the knocking persisted at irregular intervals throughout the night. By morning, I was exhausted but put the disturbances out of my mind as I prepared for my day. However, things took a turn for the worse when I returned to the room that evening. The room was colder than before, and the unsettling feeling had intensified. On the desk, I found a small, faded photograph. It showed a group of people in old-fashioned clothing standing in front of the very hotel I was staying in. One of them, a young woman, had a striking resemblance to the receptionist. I stared at the photograph, a chill running down my spine. I heard a soft whisper behind me and spun around, but the room was empty. I picked up the phone to call the front desk, but the line was dead. A sense of dread settled over me as I noticed the lights flickering ominously. The knocking started again, louder this time, accompanied by a muffled voice pleading for help. I hesitated, then opened the door. The hallway was still deserted, but the air was colder, and a shadow seemed to shift and flicker in the distance. I stepped out cautiously, following the sound of the knocking, which seemed to be coming from a door further down the hall. To my horror, I discovered that the door was labeled with a number that didn't exist on any of the building's floor plans. As I approached, the knocking grew frantic, and the voice became clearer, desperate, pleading for someone to let them out. I reached for the handle, but before I could turn it, a hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around to find the receptionist standing behind me, her face pale and drawn. "You shouldn't be here," she said in a whisper. "This floor is not for guests." I tried to ask her what she meant, but she merely shook her head and guided me back to my room. Once inside, she locked the door behind us and disappeared, leaving me alone with the unsettling noise. The rest of the night was a blur of terror. The knocking grew louder, the voice more frantic, but I was too afraid to investigate further. By morning, the noises had stopped, and the hotel seemed to return to normal. When I checked out, I couldn't find the receptionist. A different person was at the desk, and they had no record of her ever working there. The hotel staff were polite but evasive when I inquired about the missing room 313 and the strange events of the previous night. As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that the room was hiding something dark and dangerous. The photograph, the knocking, and the ghostly presence of the receptionist all pointed to a mystery I would never fully understand. I vowed never to return to that hotel, but the unsettling memory of the night lingered, a reminder of the unknown dangers that can lurk in the most unsuspecting places.